Camp starts tomorrow, and we are going to tell you who is going to win the hottest position battles. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down and seasons end, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, and we're kind of in the dog days of summer. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just go and visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's up, friends? This is Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of HorseshoeHuddle.com. I'm your resident media member for the site, and Zach is your resident film genius for the site. And today we are on training camp eve, Christmas Eve for football season. Camp officially gets underway for the Colts on Thursday, but they do report tomorrow on Wednesday. Players get out there. We'll talk to some players. We'll talk to Chris Ballard. So we'll have much more coming there. So right now, this is really our first day or our last day without football. So we're going to tell you, what we think the hottest camp battles are. Truly who the biggest competitors in those battles are and who we think is going to win. So first up is the one that has been one of the most polarizing throughout the entire offseason, but it does have a couple quality options in it. That's Dallas Flowers and Jalen Jones at cornerback. We're also going to look at the depth of the running back position. No mystery that Jonathan Taylor is the top dog there, but we know that he's not going to play 100% of the snaps. It's situational football, and Shane Steichen has always used multiple running backs. So we'll see what goes on behind that. And then we have got to figure this tight end room out. What roles are guys going to play, who might make the final cut because of it, and who's even going to play the most. So we'll go through all those things. But first things first, this is a passing league still, Zach. The Colts' third cornerback spot, it appears to be a two-horse race between Dallas Flowers and Jalen Jones. Now, Flowers opened up last season as the starter, but suffered that very unfortunate Achilles injury in week 5, which ended his season. Jalen Jones comes in as a 7th-round rookie and looks really, really good for the part. Now, does Jones keep hold of that, or does Flowers get his spot back? So I'll leave it up to you. Who are you leaning more into on this one?
Yeah, so I actually did an article on this for Horseshoe Huddle the other day, and I think this is just the most fascinating camp debate and camp battle that we're going to be watching this offseason, because to me, it's truly a wide open battle. It could really go either way. I know that you mentioned when we talked about minicamp a little over a month ago that it seemed like Jalen Jones had the slight edge in that, like he was getting more of the first team reps, but look, Dallas Flowers was the guy all last offseason. He was the guy those first couple weeks. And honestly, I would argue his game against the Los Angeles Rams was one of the best cornerback games we saw from a Colts corner all last season. It's unfortunate how that game ended, because in overtime he tore his Achilles and out for the year. And now we have to deal with talking about the potential of a 27-year-old corner coming off a major injury with only having a couple hundred snaps under his belt. What does the outlook look like for him? But for me personally, I think I would lean Dallas Flowers in this battle purely because, schematically, I think he matches up better alongside Juju Brents than a Jalen Jones does. I love Jalen Jones, and you're going to make the case for him here in a second, and I can definitely see him winning this battle as well. But for Flowers, I think as long as he's fully recovered from that Achilles injury, and that's a big, big if, because we've seen, players take a step back, obviously, in the past. But as long as he's fully recovered from that Achilles injury, he has the long speed that you're looking for on the other side of Juju Brents. Brents can win in press man coverage. He can win in press coverage. He can do some bail stuff, and you can drop him back into deeper zones. But because of the long speed deficiencies and his ability to turn and run with players like we saw with Nico Collins in that finale last year against the Texans, you really want to have a corner on the other side that you don't have to roll coverage over top of. A corner that you can really trust on that backside to turn and run with players and pinch guys to the sideline and do all the things that you need when getting vertical. And I think Flowers fits that better than Jalen Jones. I don't think we saw Jones get burned too often last year by any means, but Jalen Jones, I'm still wary of the combine speed and some of the stuff we saw in his film at Texas A&M. He plays a little bit more conservative on the underneath routes because he knows he has his speed deficiencies. So I think a guy like Flowers alongside a Juju Brents makes more sense than Jones and Brents, where you have two corners who aren't really the fastest, quickest type players. I'd rather have the mix and match of, I'm not even saying Flowers is small, but a smaller, speedier corner and a Juju Brents who's this big, long, massive press, up in your face type corner. I just think that makes more sense to me. But again, you're going to make a good case here for Jalen Jones, and I don't disagree at all. But to put some numbers to what I'm saying here, Dallas Flowers last year was the second highest coverage grade among all Colts corners, according to PFF, with a 70.6. One of only two players with a green coverage grade, so that's a good thing for him right there. I think he had his best game of his career, and again in that Week 4 game against the Rams, he had 2 pass breakups and a tackle for a loss in that one. Was really shining in that outing. And I believe he also had a 17% forced incompletion rate, which was tied with Juju Brents for the best on the team as well. So Dallas Flowers did some good things, only 4 starts last year, but I think he did some good things in those 4 starts. And as long as he's back to being that Dallas Flowers this offseason, that would be my slight winner in this really tight cornerback battle in training camp.
Yeah, I think athletically you probably have a little more upside there with Flowers. And before I completely shatter my own argument, I do want to, give Flowers his flowers, so to speak. I do really like him. There's a couple games that stick out to me that were against better competition. Obviously, the Rams game when Puka Nacua was just murdering everybody else in the secondary. I thought Flowers had a really strong showing. It wasn't just Nacua. Matthew Stafford was absolutely dealing. And then I know this was a preseason game, but the Eagles game I thought was big. That was kind of the dress rehearsal that the Colts had. That's when Anthony Richardson really played. That was the biggest dress rehearsal the Colts had in the preseason. I thought Flowers had a strong showing in that one. Again, showed the confidence, the aggressiveness to break up passes, which I really like. But with that all said, there's nothing about this offseason coming from the Colts side of it that doesn't indicate Jalen Jones has the inside track. They've talked him up all offseason. Now, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, everyone, they've all gone out of their way to say, hey, don't forget about Dallas Flowers, but they also say how much they love Jalen Jones. And being a 7th-round pick that played like an early round pick, truthfully, throughout the season, who should have had no expectations, but came out and kind of saved the day. If you were getting Darrell Baker Jr. or Tony Brown level play from him all season, it would have been a train wreck, even more than it was. So Jones is 5 years older than Flowers and not coming off of an Achilles injury.
5 years younger than Flowers.
Younger,
22 versus
that's
27.
right. Yeah,
Yes.
Of course. Yeah. Flowers is 27. Jones is 22. So
Yeah.
He's 5 years younger and not coming off of a serious lower leg injury. Plus, from what we've seen during the offseason, they've been splitting first team reps on that outside cornerback spot, but it's really been Jones going out there first.
Yeah.
So I think the Colts thinking of it really is it's his job to lose now. Flowers will get his opportunity to make his case, but, Jones kind of has to lose the job. And I mean, I think we all talk about Flowers a little more glowingly just because Jones doesn't really provide you with sexy play. Like, he's pretty solid in coverage, but he doesn't get a bunch of picks. He doesn't get a bunch of pass breakups. He's just kind of sticky in coverage, but he's lengthy and he makes life difficult for receivers. And that's kind of evidenced by only giving up 54.4% of completions when he's targeted, which was tops on the team. And through a very long stretch of the season, things kind of started to go a little more downhill when he hit the rookie wall, so to speak. But through the cushiest part of the Colts schedule, when they were facing some pretty crappy offenses, he was putting up numbers in terms of opposing completion percentage that were rivaling like rookies from a lot leading up to that. Like, he was rivaling not just his own draft class, but one of the best rookies in terms of the last several years and giving up completions toward him. So I do think, just looking at it from a Colts perspective, they're going to allow Jones to have it unless Flowers beats him to it. Again, at 22 years old, that's a guy who maybe you have on the roster for 7-8 more years. At 27 years old, I don't know that you could say that with Flowers. Now, if Flowers comes out and looks much, much better, they're not going to say, hold on, old geezer, you're too old for this. Like, they'll give him the job if he earns it. But I just think they probably see a lot more positives in having Jones be that other corner.
As a 27-year-old, I'm glad that you pulled back on calling 27-year-olds geezers here, Jake.
I am 34, so young man, you get back to your room.
One thing I will say real quick, because I know we got to move on, but like, if either of these guys can prove that they can tackle consistently, I'll give the battle to them. That's all I care about. We can't have 20+% missed tackle percentage at either one of these corner spots like we had last year. So as long as one of these guys can tackle, I'm all for it. Just give me the guy who could tackle better, and then we'll figure out the coverage later.
Honestly, that might be the biggest X factor we're not talking about. That is incredibly important.
Right.
Yep. All right. So coming up next, we are going to shift focus to the offensive side of the ball. And it's not even a starting position, but it is going to be a role at backup running back that is going to see a good bit of action by season's end. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are actually right for the role that you're looking for. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They've got the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board either. They help you hire professionals who you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but who might be open to the perfect role. I can actually attest that's true. I do share my work, my content on LinkedIn, and I've gotten several people pop up and say, hey, you looking for greener pastures? And luckily I am not, but I can say that is true. People be out there searching on LinkedIn. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours of starting their search as well. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats nowadays that they just don't have all the time and resources to actually do the hiring, but they do always try and find ways to make it easier, which is why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And are you guys watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting and craziness? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channels program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Jake, we are moving to a very important camp battle for all the fantasy footballers out there, all the people who are looking to handcuff Jonathan Taylor in fantasy football. Who are you looking to on this Colts roster? Who's going to be the running back who has the second most snaps on offense? I think that's a clear distinction we're trying to make with this one, because obviously if something were to happen to Taylor, it's going to be likely Trey Sermon. And if you're looking for a whole healthy season of Jonathan Taylor, it's going to be Evan Hull. But just in the totality of this offseason argument, which player do we think has more offensive snaps this year? And for me, I'm going with Trey Sermon. And part of that has to do with Jonathan Taylor's health, but also another part of it has to do with the fact that, the Colts aren't going to give Taylor 100% of the workload, even if Taylor is completely healthy. So I think Sermon's going to get a handful of carries next year, even if Taylor plays in all 17 games. I think Sermon's still going to hit around like 40 to 50 carries, which isn't like a crazy high number, but it's probably going to be more than what Evan Hull would hit if everyone stays healthy in that backfield. Because I think he just fits what the Colts are looking for in their starter or backup running back. They like that road grader. They like the guy who can get downhill and run through contact. I mean, if you look at the players that the Colts had last year, obviously they had Zach Moss last year, who is that similar type of mold, get downhill, be physical, break tackles, and fall forward. And then you look at the player that they offered a contract to. I mean, there were multiple reports about it. They offered a contract to A.J. Dillon before Dillon went back to the Green Bay Packers. What does A.J. Dillon do? all he can do is fall forward, run forward and fall forward. So the Colts clearly have a type when looking to the backup of their bell cow running back, and that is a player like Trey Sermon. And I think Sermon is going to get a handful of carries next year, especially if there are some games where they really want to limit the workload of Jonathan Taylor. And the other reason why I went with Sermon here, and I'm sure you can debate me on this one here, Jake, or refute me a little bit. I think a lot of times when the Colts had their starting running back, when they went to their third down offense, maybe it was because they didn't have a guy like Hull, and that certainly could change, but it's not like they went to a specific third down back. It wasn't like the Nyheim Hines role a couple years ago where every time a third down passing situation came, they went to Nyheim Hines. Last year, it was like whoever the starter was just going to stay out there on third down to keep their options open. So if Jonathan Taylor plays all 17 games, is there a third down back role for Evan Hull, or is it just going to be Jonathan Taylor on a lot of those plays? I think that's where the distinction comes on who's going to win this battle for most snaps between Trey Sermon and Evan Hull. So for me, I'm going to go with Sermon just because I think Taylor's going to take a lot of those third down snaps from Hull, and I think he's going to get a handful of carries and rotational snaps where I don't know how many snaps Hull's going to get. But Hull, if they do want to make him the Kenneth Gainwell of this offense, like he certainly has a role that way. It's just I don't know if that role is going to materialize this season with a healthy Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with you. I've always argued for Jonathan Taylor to be more involved in the passing game and everything. Like, I don't think you necessarily have to take him off, but let's just assume everybody's health. And for me, I think that means Jonathan Taylor is going to just dominate the majority, especially the majority of the early down stuff, which is going to kind of, put Trey Sermon on the back burner. And I'm with you. Like, if I've tried to make this distinction before when talking about this, because back in minicamp, I talked about Trey Sermon getting the snaps when Jonathan Taylor wasn't there. And it was kind of like the Michael Scott gif from all the Trey Sermon truthers out there. They were like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. And we're going to be like, hold on, pump your brakes. It's only if something happens to Taylor. So if something happens to Taylor, yes, Sermon is going to be the guy that goes out there and gets the snaps. But let's, fingers crossed, assume Taylor's health. We have seen that, they can bring in a third down guy before. That wasn't a strong argument last year, but the whole running back room is kind of a hodgepodge because, Taylor was in and out and, they were trying to figure things out with Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson. And, oh, yeah, by the way, we're also assuming Evan Hull wins this battle between him and Tyler Goodson. Right. But that's what I had in my roster prediction. So we're rolling with Hull here. So, I'm kind of mostly going off what I saw from Hull last summer and last spring, and that was really good. And by no means is a meniscus injury like a huge deal anymore. It cost him his whole season, but it was just because it was how he explained to us this spring. It was kind of a special meniscus injury, so to speak. But he's not like an explosive guy, but I think he's got savvy between the tackles when he runs. I think he's likely to lower his shoulder, but I think he can kind of slip through things. He's smaller in stature, obviously very good receiver, which is going to do him well. But I really think he's improving in pass protection, which is going to be a huge deal, I think. The guy, him and Tyler Goodson are a wash when it comes to receiving. But to make him win that battle, I think it's going to come down to pass protection. And ultimately, I think that will really help him see the field more than Sermon. Because Sermon, I think something has to happen to Taylor. But with Hull, I think they want to get him out there as that guy that can catch the ball and, be reliable. But also, when he gets the ball, do something with it. And not just speed because it's not his game. But, fight for some extra yards on the outside. Maybe you can get him against a corner and pick up 2-3 extra yards. That's just a guy I think they're going to be really interested in getting involved. And, we know he's a good pass catcher. I'm going to bank on him improving in pass protection, and he's serviceable as a runner between the tackles as well from what we've seen before. I mean, he played in one game, so he's got to kind of prove me right there. But yeah, I'm going to say Hull, just assuming Taylor's health. Hull is just kind of by proxy going to have a little more usage than Sermon will.
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to, Shane Steichen in his career has always had, running back by committee. So he's had a guy who's been the bell cow first and second down. He's had a third down back, and he's had to change a pace back. You look at Philly, they had, what was it? Boston Scott was there. They had Miles Sanders, I think is his name, and then Kenneth Gainwell. It was a three-headed monster they had. But he's never had a running back like Jonathan Taylor, that super bell cow, superstar potential type player. So it depends on how much he wants to take that player off the field. If he wants to go back to his past and go to a third down running back role with an Evan Hull, I think he has a solid player there who can be his Kenneth Gainwell. But how much does he want to take Jonathan Taylor off the field for specific downs or for specific plays? I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to in this battle. So all you fantasy football people out there, half-point PPR, 25-team leagues or whatever the heck, the deepest leagues you can go, that's a way you throw it at Evan Hull maybe there. But, maybe get Trey Sermon to be your standard league 14-team like safety guard for Jonathan Taylor. You can probably talk more fantasy football than I can, Jake, but I think Sermon's your safer bet in standard leagues, and then PPR leagues you're probably wanting Hull.
Yeah, I would say so, because you're really looking to handcuff Sermon to Taylor in that instance. But otherwise, if you're looking for probably the higher upside on points in PPR, it's definitely going to be Hull, because I don't really recall Sermon even being very involved in the passing game when he was out there. It was kind of Goodson was that guy, because the only time Sermon needed to be used, Goodson was available as well. So I don't think Sermon is going to be super needed in the passing game.
No, for sure. But coming up, guys, we are going to talk about this crazy tight end room. We have no clue how to break it down right now, but we're going to try to break it down here in this final segment for you guys.
I love sports, you guys. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. There's less stuff on TV. And, baseball is there, which, kind of that has to be your that has to be what you lean on at these times. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want, because don't forget the Olympics are coming up as well. So there's really, no better way to find something new and interesting when it comes to sports than going on FanDuel and just perusing the bets that they've got out there. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That means there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Again, we've arrived at the week in which training camp starts. If you want to go out and hedge your bets right now that Michael Pittman Jr. is going to have his first 1,500-yard season, going to get his first 10-touchdown season, Taylor's going to lead the league in rushing. Go out there and make your declarations now. And then, that way you can tell everybody that you told them so. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. So tight end, who's going to make it? What is going on? Can anybody help? Can anybody stay healthy? So we've talked about kind of by proxy, Kylan Granson and Mo ALIE-COX. Those are the guys who the Colts probably feel most comfortable and safest starting if the season was at the end of this week. But Jelani Woods, he missed all of last season after having a pretty promising rookie campaign. Drew Ogletree had some good flashes last year as well, but had, I think, one or two concussions. He had at least one or two injuries. And then obviously at the end of the season, he had some off-field issues that kept him off the roster. So those guys, you mix in Will Mallory as well. He's kind of the dark horse in here, but who is honestly, it's someone who we have talked about potentially winding up being the leading receiver among the group. So right now I think we're going to primarily focus on Woods, Ogletree, Granson, and ALIE-COX. But man, I think this really comes down to not necessarily who is the starters, but who's going to have the most snaps. You can kind of look at it the running back way as well, because if you followed along with us this offseason, this is all going to be about roles and specialties. It's when it comes to Shane Steichen's offense, I don't think it's going to be any one guy that like dominates all the snaps and everything. And Zach, you've got more snap share statistics from last year to kind of further explain this. But, you got a guy who, Jelani Woods, he's going to be kind of a big play threat in the passing game. Drew Ogletree is kind of creeping into that Mo ALIE-COX role. Kylan Granson is kind of a jack of all trades. So if you had to kind of put your finger on it right now, how would you throw guys into certain roles? And I mean, only so many guys can make it. I doubt they carry 5 tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if they even carry 4 tight ends this year? I mean, most
Yeah.
teams carry like 3. And the Colts carried 5 going into last year. They obviously put Jelani Woods on IR to start the year, so it ended up only being 4. But that's still a lot for most teams. Most teams don't carry 4 tight ends, or if they do, they usually have one that's kind of like up and down between the practice squad and not really like a full-time roster guy. So it was crazy to see the Colts even carry that many last year. But if you look at the snap numbers from last year, the only 2 players to surpass 400 total snaps, which is not a very high, standard here. This is like half the offensive snaps on the year, where Mo ALIE-COX and Kylan Granson. Drew Ogletree was close behind with the high 300s. He was likely going to be the leading snap getter last year if it weren't for everything that happened late in the season with him and with the injuries he dealt with early in the season. And then Will Mallory was in the high 100s, and Jelani Woods obviously didn't play last year. So I think ultimately it comes down to who becomes the best blocker for who's going to lead the snaps. And my money would be on Drew Ogletree as of right now. But look, guys, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Mo ALIE-COX. Like, again, we always talk about this. I don't know if it's a good sign for all these other guys that Mo ALIE-COX is tight end 1 again, but at the end of the day, he's the one who blocks besides Drew Ogletree. One of these other guys needs to step up as a blocker. And I don't think it's going to be Kylan Granson because we kind of know what he is. But can a Jelani Woods be a serviceable blocker this year? If Jelani Woods can be a serviceable run blocker, he's going to get 800 snaps this year. He's going to get 700, 800 snaps because his upside as a pass catcher, along with being a serviceable run blocker, would make you never take him off the field. Same with like a Will Mallory. Even if Will Mallory can be an above average run blocker, why would you take him off the field? He's got the athleticism and the hands that you don't ever take him off. But as of right now, I would lean Drew Ogletree because he's shown the most growth as a run blocker. He's got a great size, great physicality. He did some really good things in the run game. But man, if you ask me who's going to lead this group in receiving yards, I don't know, man. I truly have no clue. It could be anyone from Mallory to Ogletree, Granson, Woods. It could be Mo again. It could be Mo. Who knows? Who knows with Mo? Mo's always around. He's become the Ashton Dulin of the tight end room in terms of just survivability. But yeah, I would lean towards Drew Ogletree just because of that run blocking right now. But again, it comes down to what Jelani Woods and what Will Mallory and what Granson even can show in that department to gain more snaps this next season.
Yeah, I think that Ogletree is probably going to, let's just say everyone stays healthy through camp and, everyone takes at least a little bit of step forward in their progression. I do see Ogletree leading in snaps just because we've already kind of seen it. They've gotten him involved not only in, blocking and pass blocking, but inline blocking as well, which, if you can do that, you can stay on the field. So he may lead in snaps, but I think that Woods is going to have a role regardless of whether or not he could block a breeze coming through a window. He offers something that not everybody can do. Like, he's huge, he's athletic, he's a dangerous pass catcher. So I think he'll probably be the leading receiver of the group. Ogletree will get the most snaps. And then you kind of see where Granson falls in, behind there. In this instance, I think Mo ALIE-COX is kind of, if Ogletree and Woods are looking good, I just don't see the reason to have Mo on the roster. It's a numbers game. I mean, I like what he's been able to do, but I just don't see them carrying 5 tight ends because Will Mallory, I think he's got the makings of being a very reliable pass catcher. I mean, At worst, he has reliable hands that can move the chains, and that's always going to have a spot on a roster. But
yeah,
I honestly if again, like I mentioned, if everyone takes a step forward and stays healthy, I think Mo ALIE-COX is probably the odd man out. But where does Kylan fall in the pecking order? Because the past couple of years, it feels like he has been the one to be relied on to be able to do the most. Whatever role they need filled, he's there. He's not a bad pass catcher. He gets separation. He has some yak ability. We've seen him do some things downfield, but because Jelani Woods and Drew Ogletree probably offer more upside, does that make him, the third guy? Because again, Will Mallory always getting better, reliable hands moving the chains. I'm very curious what happens with Granson if all parts are equal.
Yeah, I will say this real quick before we get out of here, and we'll see if you guys agree with me in the comments. But I don't think there's like, say we keep 4 on at tight end this year. There is no order of 4 players or any particular 4 players that would shock me. Like you could sell me on any of these 5 guys being cut or traded this offseason, and it wouldn't shock. Like Jelani Woods and Kylan Granson would probably be the most shocking. But like if Woods has a bad camp and doesn't look like himself, I could easily see him being a cut candidate. I could see Kylan Granson being a cut candidate if guys like Mallory and Ogletree and Woods take big steps. I could see obviously Mo and Ogle. I mean, probably not Ogletree either, but like I could see any of these guys being cut candidates. I could see any of these guys being the starter. I could see any of these guys being the 4th string. Like there is no order of this tight end room that would surprise me. And it really is this year's cornerback room, just with fewer spots to fill. Where corner last year, it was a wide open competition between Jalen Jones, Juju Brents, Darius Rush, Daryl Baker Jr., and Dallas Flowers, but they had like 6 roster spots for it, or 5 roster spots, whatever it was going to be. This year, it's 3, maybe 4 roster spots for 5 guys, and any of these 5 guys could start or be cut. So it's going to be a fascinating battle, and we're going to be able to cover it throughout all of training camp this year, which is going to be great. Before we get out of here, though, guys, I do want to remind you, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Training camp players report tomorrow. Jake will be boots on the ground like always at training camp. He'll be getting some interviews and some clips of players going up on the YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following us on social medias as well, at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. And like I mentioned, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.